This thing is a pyramid since time immemorial. Shit runs downhill, money goes up. It's that simple. I should not have to be coming here, hat in my hand, reminding you about your duty to that man. And I don't want to hear about the fucking economy either. I don't want to hear it. So, break it down for him. What two businesses have traditionally been recession-proof since time immemorial? Certain aspects of show business and our thing. Now that's it. That's all I gotta say. Frankly, I'm depressed and ashamed.
Depressed and ashamed, you say? Maybe you should go see a therapist, Tony Soprano. Why, I guess you do. Welcome to Cut to Black, a Sopranos sit-down. I'm Jim Scampoli, and I've seen every episode of The Sopranos.
I'm Jacob Burrows, and I've seen 40 episodes of The Sopranos. Yes, that's right. We're on the big 4-0. I'm an old, crotchety, that's insulting. I'm a middle-aged man at this point in Sopranos years. And boy, I feel like I know everything going on in the world. I feel like I know everything about The Sopranos because we're on season 4. I'm now a real man. This episode. Who made it, though?
This episode, For All Debts Public and Private, written by David Chase, the creator of The Sopranos, and directed by Alan Coulter, who is a Sopranos mainstay. We've heard his name before. We'll hear his name again. But yes, as we touched upon at the end of our discussion of the season 3 finale, as far as in real world times, it's been quite a while since people have seen The Sopranos, and the world's changed quite a bit. Although they have to cheat it a bit because they kind of fucked up with the end of season 3 because they're talking about the Super Bowl and they're talking about the teams in the Super Bowl. So it does place that episode on a specific date. And then now they're trying to act like this is only a few months later, but they're also referencing 9/11, not directly, but in a little bit of ways. So it's in real world times, it's been over a year, but they're kind of acting like it's been 6 months on the show, even though it couldn't possibly be that way. But, hey, for the good of the drama, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I will say, coming back into it at this point, I mean, like you said, it's been a long time. Word has apparently spread because I believe this is the most viewed episode of The Sopranos. That is when it was live on TV. Or it's not TV, it's HBO. But 13 million people saw this one. So this is at the height of Sopranos hype. And David Chase himself penned this one. I will say, when we start out this episode, I am this looks great. This looks different. I don't know, a little bit, and the colors are different in a good way. At the same time, some of the scenes, they're popping. I'm still talking about mainly the color and the way it's shot. It's popping in a way that makes me feel like it could be a family drama, which is somehow great. It's all colorful and high key lighting when they're at home and stuff like that. So it feels a bit different. But I also, I don't know. I was just oh, this looks great.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm just picking this up or it's not there. It does not that The Sopranos has never not been a confident show, but it does feel like there's this new level of confidence between the look and the direction, and I mean, it's only the premiere, so it's hard to say the story in general, but. I don't know. Yeah, I feel that as well. There's a different feel to it. Maybe it is partially the amount of time. There's a lot more time to sit and dwell and plan how you want everything to go. And especially with season 3, I mean, it was well known with Nancy Marchand, the actress that played Livia, passing away in between, but they still had a new season within the next year. Seasons 1, 2, and 3 are all normal TV seasons, it's a new year, here's a new season. But they were kind of doing some stuff on the fly, had to change things on the fly, but here they are back with some time. I don't know how true it is, but I think I had heard or I read that they initially were supposed to start production in the fall of 2001, but then of course 9/11 happened and it changed things up a bit. So they didn't start so much later, and then it didn't premiere till much later. But yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, speaking of changing things up, I did wonder last time, are they going to cut it out of the intro? Because the Twin Towers, they've been there for the first 3 seasons, and it's so weird, watching something from before and seeing that, and it was like not a big deal, and of course it's in there. But then now it's the 2002, so of course they
Yeah, now it's not. Now it's gone. Now it's not there. And then it's not like a thing where a lot of things at this time would take, like, they would take the World Trade Center out, or ads that had World Trade Center they take out, but then they like put it back in later. But I think on the show it's gone from now, right? Oh, no, are we cutting out?
Yeah, I didn't hear anything you just said, I'm afraid. So we're having some slight technical issues there. But yeah, you were trying to talk about 9/11, and YouTube's trying to shut us down, of course. They know what we're getting into. Yeah, so I don't know what you said, but I agree. I think what you probably were saying is something along the lines of it is like they cut it out of the intro, but it's not like they're ignoring it. In fact, they're like working it into the story and the changing world of The Sopranos.
Yes. Now, let me know if it keeps cutting out, because we'll just reconnect and then edit all this out of the podcast, because the live show doesn't matter. All right. Did you hear me on that part? Okay.
Oh yeah, I heard that loud and clear. So, first scene here, we have Carmela reading from the newspaper about influence peddling, and I thought they were doing something where they were going to reveal her hair was super short, because she just holds it at eye level, sort of, and that's a long shot. I mean, yeah, it goes on for a long time. But yeah, her hair is just a little bit different. It looks great. Carmela looks great in this episode, by the way.
Yeah, and the article, yeah, it's about Italy, and something to do with a plaintiff gave a bunch of fish to a judge to speed up the process, and they just, the Italy said that learning that the country's highest court of appeal had ruled that influence peddling is not a crime. And I mean, tying in with the title of the episodes, for all debts, public and private, and plus just the Soprano lifestyle in general. Hey, might as well peddle the influence. You got the money, you got the sway. Let's go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we get an almost iconic first episode of a season shot of Tony going to get his newspaper. It's basically the whole shot there. And then we see this FBI agent picking up her baby, and with her presumably baby daddy, another FBI agent in there. But yeah, so just sort of a lot of establishing things that are going on here, including Tony getting excited about seeing the ducks, but no, it's just a goddamn squirrel.
Well, and I do want to call out the World Destruction song by Public Image Limited, featuring Johnny Rotten as one of the singers from Sex Pistols. This is the first time I'd ever heard this song, and even like immediately, I remember watching this episode and being like, "What is this song?" It starts and opens the episode. It's such a great pick, and it's, we get that feeling again that we had when Tony was telling the story in the pilot, and he's walking down his driveway, getting the paper and talking about the end of an era. And we get the same thing, because now the news is getting even worse, and it feels like we're facing Armageddon. I love this whole setup. And I love starting a new season of Sopranos and seeing Tony walk down his driveway. It feels like everything's right in the world.
Yes, and while they're sort of concerned about what's going on in the world, we have this stack of newspapers because it's part of social studies at AJ's new school. And Tony asks, "Are you passing social studies?" And AJ says, "You just revealed your own ignorance," which doesn't feel like something he would have said at the end of last season, but I like it. I like where he's at. He is right. He did just start this class, so there's no way to tell if he's passing or not at this point. But he's certainly not reading the newspapers.
Yeah, and well, another quick call out too to the FBI agent. We try as they flesh her out a little bit more. We see she has a baby. Did you notice who her husband or boyfriend is?
No.
It is Job from Arrested Development. That's right. That is Will Arnett himself. We did see Buster in an earlier episode running the chemo machines, I believe, for Uncle Junior. And now we have Will Arnett popping up, getting the Arrested Development cast all through Sopranos. Yeah, he's the guy on the phone. He's not doing his Job voice. He's not being very funny, so I guess you don't quite notice him, but he's there.
Yeah, I just pulled it up now because I had to see, and yeah, of course it is. But it just flew right over my head when I was first watching it. There, he's just there, like doing exposition, basically, like, yeah, she's doing the undercover stuff still with The Sopranos, like letting us all know what's up.
And then yeah. Oh, and we get a little taste of Carmilla. And I guess this is kind of, I mean, this is par for the course for Carmilla at the beginning of a new season of Sopranos. Much like we need to see Tony walk down the driveway to get a newspaper, Carmilla has a new crush. We see it hinted at just a little bit as she thinks Furio's there, as she looks and checks her hair, and she's kind of, bummed that it's Christopher and not Furio.
Yeah. And Christopher's a bit bummed that he's been relegated to being a driver again. He doesn't. So it is interesting in this episode. They sort of lay it out that Tony's thinking that one thing's happening, and Christopher's thinking that another thing is happening. But we'll get into it. He's doing some driving there. He's like not explaining what's up. But the thing about Christopher is he doesn't understand that he's being like privileged in being close to Tony. He thinks like, what am I, your errand boy now? But then like Tony's separating himself from other people, and like, it's so frustrating to see these two.
Yes, and it's a nice mirror again, like to go call back season 1 again, because it is like we're starting anew here. Because Christopher again is too stupid to, like, he was doing the same thing. We had a shot when we've seen the shots of Christopher driving Tony around, but complaining about his position. And now he's a made guy and he does have power. And although I guess it's kind of on Tony as well, because he's not being clear that, like, no, I want you, I'm grooming you to be my right-hand man. Like, he should be a little bit more clear, but maybe to Tony, it's like that's part of the test, I guess, for him to pick up and understand what he's doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. So we have Tony going into the doctor's office with Junior, where Junior wants to change the deal here a little bit, get a bit more of a cut, because he's got this trial now coming up. After 2 seasons of no trial happening, it's finally coming around, and they need to hire these experts and this and that. And Tony says, nah, it's all staying the same. I got my own money problems.
Yeah, and Uncle Junior is being very direct with, like, you kept me as boss to take a hit, and that's exactly what I'm doing. So it doesn't seem that outlandish that he wants him to help him out a bit and maybe make things right. And of course, Uncle Junior hasn't learned from in the past. He's still flirting with nurses, and thinks he's just another young coxman out on the town here, as he's flirting with the nurse, and it's uncomfortable for everyone.
Yeah, although she's very sort of like game for it in a way, where she's like, people get sued for doing that sort of thing these days, but she lets him kiss her cheek and all, and like rolls her eyes playfully, and then makes googly eyes at Tony as well. So we'll see what happens with that. So then just a quick scene there where we have Carmilla seeing Mrs. Bompensero handing out cutlets or whatever in the grocery store, sort of to kickstart her storyline.
Yeah, because even though, I guess this is kind of a Carmilla character trait at this point, it's not necessarily, not to pick on the writing, but it's like Carmilla, once again, in last season, when she took the ring off and seemingly was starting to branch out for herself, is now once again just looking to Tony to save the day. I mean, it's a little different because she's not completely relying on him for jewelry or like nonsense. She's very just obviously concerned about the future. And even besides just Angie Bompensero, just look at, Rosalie April and everything she's lost. Yeah. And I guess, and Tony does have a comment when she ends up confronting him about it, where he's like, I took care of her long enough. So I guess the checks have stopped coming from Tony Soprano.
Yep. So we get a scene of the FBI agent hanging out with Adriana, because they're best friends now. Like they they became good friends very quickly. And yeah, Christopher comes home and he's like, he doesn't like this girl at all, doesn't like that there's someone in his apartment even. And Adriana's like, oh, stop. But yeah, he just wants her to get out of there so he can go shoot up in his toes. And I don't know what happened at some point between me first watching Breaking Bad and rewatching it. I became really uncomfortable with watching people do heroin, and I don't know what it is, but it really like I don't mind taking a shot, not a heroin shot, but like just a regular shot. It doesn't really like bum me out, but when I watch it on TV, it's so disturbing for me when I see people doing heroin, like Christopher's doing, this idiot.
Now, but when you say take a shot, like you don't mind if they just do it in their arm, or you're just talking about in general?
I mean, for me personally, like I don't mind needles. Like stick them in me, I don't give a shit.
Oh, I see.
But like when I watch it on TV and someone's like takes the heroin and then like oh, and then like the fucking music kicks in, I'm like, this is making me really uncomfortable.
Well, for some reason too, like the fact that he's doing it in his toes or whatever, or in between his toes, it's I don't know why making it more real isn't quite the proper description, but I guess it just feels more real because it's so premeditated. Like he knows that he's going to hide it that way. And it's definitely, I mean, I guess maybe in the back half of season 3, we didn't spend a ton of time with Christopher, but it felt like the last time we spent time with him outside of him, having the learning curve of dealing with the bookie and becoming a made guy, it seemed like he had things together. And to now check back in with him and he's reverted so much and he's complaining. He's complaining about like, when have I never not been there, as he's shooting up heroin. Yes. And then even Adriana, like I like it too that it's not even that she's against doing heroin. She's like, well, we can just like smoke it. And, and he's like, that's more addictive than this. And it's like, I guess that's debatable. I don't know which one more addictive. Maybe it is. But she's like, maybe you shouldn't do this. And he's like, I need to, just classic, I guess, addictive personality. You kind of rationalize it in your head. So any little slight, it's like, fuck this, I'm getting high.
Yeah, Tony's riding my ass and like not telling me what's going on. Oh, I gotta do these drugs. And yeah, he does complain about that. Again, he doesn't know what's going on. But Tony's not making it very, very clear either. So Tony's just making a nice Sunday, watching a nice cowboy movie with a nice song in it, and just Carmela just has to come and ruin it, talking about how they need money if he dies, and women, right?
I love this moment because, I mean, one of the great things about The Sopranos is how they take this larger-than-life mafia person, but we get stuck in these mundane, real situations. And given she's talking about money and the possibility of being arrested or killed, but I don't know, I feel like everyone can relate to, like, he's just making this, like, delicious-looking sundae. He's got a movie he really wants to watch. He has, like, the, as you sit down for the, like, and you're like, I'm really just going to veg out now. This is my time. And then someone has to come in and be like, nope, the real world's not done with you yet. And I'm not even blaming Carmela. Like her worries are completely legitimate and it makes complete sense. But I get Tony's, like, you'll be taken care of, and he has to be vague to not make an accessory after the fact. But one of the best lines, and I think they used it in a lot of ads, is when she's like, I don't know if I have to tell you, I forget the exact line, but it's like, I don't have to tell you this, but maybe you should watch the news, but everything comes to an end. Fucking great stuff. And then now it's just like, she even turns off the movie at one point, and he's just evening destroyed.
Yeah. And so he actually at one point starts like, you're right, my job is very stressful and this and that, but she's just staring at at him. So he like stops and like, fine, I'll just keep going then. And like he's getting riled up, but then he's like, I'm getting riled up. That's not what I wanted to do. And they just keep talking about bonds and stocks, and he's like, oh, you have to be high up in the corporate structure to make any money off stocks. Which I don't even know. But then there's like, she says, oh yeah, just grab the money from under the mattress and we can make it grow. And he says, stays put. And also, just no money in this house.
Yeah, no money in this house ever since the last raid or whatever it was. But as we see. He's I mean, I guess technically there's no money in the house,
Ugh,
but there's
yeah.
some money. There's some money around.
Yeah, and again, I don't like it's so hard for me to understand how this works. We need like a Saul Goodman type lawyer to explain how this money is going to be laundered because it seems really silly and stupid to have that much money like hidden around the house because you could easily be busted, like someone could easily have a search warrant or whatever. But then it's like nobody has to keep it there maybe in order to get it cleaned later or like what's the big idea with hiding all this money?
From my understanding, it's more so that uh he's specifically hiding it because going back to the time, like he's specifically hiding it and keeping it out of the banks and keeping it out of investments and just keeping and businesses and everything. He wants it in the fucking floor. He wants
Yeah.
it in the bird feeder because especially going back to that time, like within a year of 9/11, there was so much uncertainty and things were just, it just seemed like there was no hope.
Yeah.
That it's, but then he's also kind of playing the poor man
Yeah.
throughout the episode as we see like going up to like the next scene um where he asks like not only to just Carmilla but to also to the rest of the capos. It's like we don't have any money, and I guess maybe part of that's true. Maybe they're not making the same this, you know, the same big bonuses they were, and that's a bad thing. It's like, okay, we only made, you know, 10 million this year when we made 10 million last year, so that means we're doing bad because we didn't grow anything or whatever the fuck.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I feel like he's yeah, he's I mean, he is the boss. I guess it's his prerogative, but he is like stockpiling cash for purely selfish reasons. I mean, the mob is, you know, it's run on selfishness, so it makes sense. But also he's like stressed out for real because he goes into the Bing right here in the next scene and beats up the guy whose name I always forget.
I believe it's Georgie.
Yeah, it's
um
Georgie. But his eye's fine now, so I'm glad to see that. But not his back anymore because he just keeps going on about the ice and how, hey, but it's going to water down the drinks. Like, that's a bad
yeah,
thing. And then he, like, yeah, of course, throws all the ice at him, starts hitting him with the bucket, etc.
I mean, he's definitely stressed, but also this is not, again, this is like walking down the driveway to get the paper. This is Sopranos mainstay. It's a new season. Tony needs to beat Georgie up for some reason, for something that
Yeah.
he's mad about. But yeah, and this is one of my favorite scenes. We use a piece of it at the start of the show. It is one of like when I think of the Sopranos, I think of this Tony speech for some reason. I think partially it's because it's I've in my memory, anyways. It's the first time I've ever heard the phrase "time immemorial." Like I never knew what that was before until Tony's using it here.
Okay.
And I love that he's pretending like he cares about Junior. He's taking what Junior told him earlier and using it
Yeah.
as a pity party to try to, you know, kickstart these capos to get bust some heads and get some money out there.
It is great, and it is great to see. Okay, these are the capos now because I lose track. Like, and I guess Polly, and I mean Polly. We'll get into Polly. But yeah, these guys are like the capos, and like the excuses they're given of like, what about that thing with the guy? And he's like, it died on the vine. And then the other, I don't want to hear about the economy. Like they've clearly got these excuses going on. It seems like for everything shit that Ralphie was doing last season, he's probably like the best earner. So I guess it makes sense now. The thing they were always saying about Ralphie, oh, we can't get rid of him. He's a good earner. Like he seems like the only one who's doing his job, maybe.
Well, yeah, and it's again, this is something. Yes, in this context, it's a mafia guy, but I'm sure there were sale. I mean, there still are, but especially at the time, there were sales jobs and there were sales meetings that were very similar to this, where some guys yelling at them because there's not, you know, where is there no growth in this fucking vacuum sales, wherever the fuck we're selling? Why are we not upsizing more Happy Meals or whatever? But yeah, and it's interesting coming so close off of the finale from season 3 because there's a comment that Ralphie makes when they drop that duffel bag full of money, and Ralphie says something about like, no matter the economy, Skip, you're always making this big money or something like that. And I guess it's a natural progression for like something like the Esplanade that they were always talking about, because again, going back to the time, as far as like post 9/11, stuff like that was getting kind of pushed to the side. I mean, not
Yeah.
completely, but it wasn't the same, flow that they were used to.
Yeah. Yeah, so and again with the timeline you mentioned, it is interesting because it's got to be. I mean, they showed what teams were playing in the Super Bowl, I think. So I think that's solidly put that in like the early part of 2001. This is
Yep.
like the end of the summer, but like yeah, it's got to like yeah, they're doing some trickery for sure. Like it's been a few months, but it's clearly 2002. So there
And
you
like
go.
I understand why they have to do that, because then otherwise the undercover agent had been working for a year and a half,
Yeah.
and it would have to be different than that. And not that Jackie Jr.'s death could completely be washed away in that amount of time, but they want it to feel fresher, you know what I mean, as far as plot and drama wise. So
Yeah.
it's completely forgivable. They don't have to change all their storylines, but yeah, they're definitely playing with some trickery here as far as the time span.
So there's a quick scene of Tony hiding money, but that basically moves us into a dinner scene where Rosalind, is that her name? Yeah,
Yeah,
Rosalind
Rosalie.
and Rosalie, yeah, and Ralphie are over for dinner because it's her birthday and she's very down. But then, of course, Janice is there as well, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
just laughing it up, loving it, loving the story. And, Ralphie's doing his charismatic thing that he does. But then at some point he has to sneak off and just do some quick drugs, of course, because it's The Sopranos.
Yeah, he's like telling some stories about having a Harley or a motorcycle, and then AJ's all interested in that because he wants to get a motorcycle or a car. And yeah, Janice is getting her hooks in Ralphie, laughing really hard. I think touching his arm, stuff like that.
Hmm.
I think Adriana and
Danielle.
Danielle show up, so she's
Yeah.
in Tony Soprano's house now. Yeah,
Great.
Ralphie sneaks away to do some blow. Janice shows up, so now they're both doing blow. Tony does notice that their seat, like they're both kind of gone, and Tony's not a dumb man. He knows something's going on there.
Yeah. Yeah. And Danielle's there, and it only took 4 months. In other words, or however long it's been. In other words, way more effective than a lamp. Just get a human in there, and you're good.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
So moving on, Tony does need to get. It's interesting because we see him excited about the ducks, but then and he's getting like bird feed for them or whatever. But it's also to hide the money, so it's like it's not really for that. The only important thing in this scene is wow, that sign is so fake.
Which one is it? Like the bird feed sign?
Yes, the wild bird. It says Wild Bird Center, and it's like the fakest sign ever. Like it's so clearly like put in there. Just so it is. It is. I guarantee it.
Oh, just like they kind of had to do a little computer CGI type deal. Let me.
Yeah, because they
I want.
couldn't find a huge enough sign that said Wild Bird Center, and they didn't bother making it. They were like, let's make it on computers, even though it's presumably more expensive in 2002. It just looks like it's done in Word with like a drop shadow, and it's green, and it's all the same nuance of green, like it's lit, but it's not lit. Y'all go have a look. You'll know it when you see it.
I'll pull it up real quick. I'm gonna
It's
pull it up.
25 minutes in. 25 minutes.
Here we go. Here it is. Yeah, looking at it, I honestly didn't notice it at the time, but now that you pointed out, it is kind of like they just put a outline on a Photoshop
Yeah.
text and just dropped it in there, right next to the
Yup.
Italianissimo.
Exactly. And there's someone even walking in front of it at one point, and I'm like, that's just more work, like, because their head passes in front of it. I'm like, why did you do that? Someone had to like go through those frames, and because it doesn't look bad as such, it's just not a real sign because it's all the same shade of green. Like, there's nothing. Anyway, yeah, this is not important, but it's just I had to call it out.
And then he meets the selectmen, and they're still talking kind of Esplanade type business, but they're also basically saying these are ways to take advantage of the current current landscape, the political landscape, and how it's affecting the economy and specifically real estate. Because they're kind of talking about like, yeah, let's buy now. We could buy shit up because it's cheap because no one wants to buy and we have money. So let's take advantage of everyone's fear. And we see that play out as Tony makes it seem like he's extending an olive branch to Junior by buying like a lot that he owns that's going to be worth way more down the line, apparently.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Tony, you love your uncle and you want to help him out, but clearly, like, he wouldn't be doing this if this wasn't the case. But yeah, it's a good scheme. The property value is probably going to go up. Even if something goes wrong with this, it's still like property. It's New York or New Jersey, whatever. It's gonna be worth more. So in that meeting, we also bring in Bobby and let him know that he's becoming the new capo, right?
Oh yes, when they're back at the doctor's office. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they Junior does take his shot finally with the nurse. Is like, hey, let's go to Atlantic City or whatever, something really dumb. And I guess that's the plight of all of us males. If we're old and alone, we're gonna sit there being the creepy guy that hits on young girls because we're just oblivious and like, hey, why not? Maybe she will. But yes, also while that's going on, he does.
Well, you don't even have to be old for that. You can just be any guy, any age, really.
Very true. Yeah. But yeah, then they decide they're gonna bump up Bobby. And I like that we don't really see the scene so much. We just see it from like a doctor's point of view it's just like, oh yeah, I'm at my job being a doctor and I look into an exam room and it's just three Goombas have to shut the door in my face because, hey, we're doing business here. Get out of my face.
Yeah, I think it's the same doctor as before who's like nodding to Tony as he's like, oh yeah, here's the thing. Like this is the thing they're obviously doing over and over. But yeah, so I didn't notice, but the scene does parallel the ending of The Godfather where, they're all kissing. Well, no spoilers for The Godfather, but they do close the door at the end of The Godfather. We haven't watched it in a while. We were supposed to watch it between seasons.
But watched it. That would have been perfect. That would have been the payoff right there.
Yeah. But yeah, they do close the door, and it is a bit similar. So there you go.
Oh, that would have been the payoff. God damn it.
I even pulled it up. I watched the final scene there, just like, oh yeah, they do close the door. That's basically the similarity, though. It's just three guys, and then the door gets closed. But moving on to the important stuff going on. Paulie is in Orange. Orange is the new Paulie Walnuts over here. He's been locked up. He's in the can, and at this point, I literally was like, okay, better double check that I'm watching the right episode because I feel like I missed something here. Even though like clearly it's the right episode because like the FBI agent's there and everything, but I was like, am I watching the wrong season? Because I don't remember this. But then in the conversation with Johnny Sacks, they get it out of like, oh, here's what happened and so on.
Yeah, and apparently he was recovering from some major back surgery, so they had to kind of write him off a little bit, like not completely, but change his storyline a bit. So he's in the can. But yeah, he's still got Johnny Sack's ear. He still does feel like maybe he's not getting his just dues from Tony. And what isn't he also like, hey, don't change my program. Don't touch that fucking TV. Well, he listens the guy to the phone at first and he stares him down. And then while he's on the phone, like, don't touch that. My program's coming up.
Yeah, which is Jerry Springer, as far as I can tell, is the program that he needs to watch. But yeah, he tells the story of how he got caught, like some gun charge of a weapon that was like, it feels really like they're explaining it to us, the audience, at this point, and I'm just like, oh, okay.
Isn't even Johnny Sack kind of like, all right, I get it. Like he doesn't even want to hear the story either. Yeah, like he's almost getting a Tony reaction to Paulie because Paulie's one that'll just go if you let him. So it's like, all right, we understand. What's more important here?
Yeah, and it is interesting that, like you said, they just this is one of the things they just had to do because the actor wasn't available. But it makes sense because he was being like not marginalized, but he was feeling like he was pushed to the side. So just having him be inside for a bit is obviously gonna like emphasize that even more. So it wasn't like I was like, oh, this doesn't make any sense. He must be having back surgery. Like, I was like, okay, cool. I guess this is what they're doing to push him even further towards Johnny Sacks and away from Tony Soprano.
Yes, yeah. And then We see Carmela. She's got a full stove of goodies going. Great, nice family meal. But Tony calls. Something came up. He's got to work tonight, and they got some big celebration going on. I guess they got a lot of money. Even though Tony was just yelling about money, like I guess earlier that day. Now they're celebrating that something came through. But we do get the line where Carmine has to tell Tony that a Don doesn't wear shorts because Johnny Sack's been over when Tony's had some of these cookouts. And that's something to look down upon. That's like cunnilingus. And if you read Wikipedia, apparently someone on the inside, a real life mafia associate, did tell David Chase that a real Don would not wear shorts. So
yes, someone who praised the show for being accurate, except that a real Don would not wear shorts. So Carmine gets to pull that one out there. And at this point, I'm like, just because you mentioned it, I'm like, oh, and I read it on Wikipedia. I'm like, oh yeah, that's Carmine. That's the guy everyone's always talking about, but I've seen him like once.
Yeah, that's Carmine up in New York. And then we get kind of like a shameless scene of some women making out on a bed as Tony just like smokes a cigar and watches. And then Chris, of course, is doing drugs. But then Tony kind of wakes him up. He's taking him out somewhere. Ralphie's passed out naked on the hotel couch.
Oh, yeah. And I guess... I mean, stewardesses, how do they arrange this? Like, because they're not strippers. You just assume they're going to be strippers, but they're actual stewardesses. And I'm like, this is not the 50s. This is the early 2000s. Yeah. Do they even have time off? I guess they must, but okay, well, whatever.
Maybe it's just, wait, and are they Swedish?
They're Icelandic, so they're from Reykjavik.
All right. Yeah. Maybe it's just their cool mafioso accents and being in America and the drugs. But yeah, you're right. It's not as much of a leap to be like, oh, these women that work for us at this strip club, we're going to make them do whatever we want. Then, like, we just met these stewardesses earlier. We're going to make them do whatever we want.
Thing is, you can pay stewardesses a lot of money and see what happens, but like it's just that all of them are there in like a clump. Like, hey, let's all have this fun outing together as we're all off duty for a bit. And I guess, and they do say at the start of the scene, here's to Newark's newest hotel or whatever. So I'm wondering, are they referring to the land he just stole from Junior, or is it just in general they're just celebrating some new mob achievement they've made that we're not even privy to?
I think they're just because I think he doesn't bring up the land until the later scene when they're at the house. We kind of just jumped ahead and mentioned it.
Oh yeah, of course. Duh.
But that's all right. But yeah,
that's what it is.
But yeah, they're just it's some sort of real estate scheme that they got some money, the new hotel, they got a piece of it, of course, because they got their fingers in any union or whatever jobs are going on in the city.
Yeah. So we got a great scene coming up here with Tony sitting in the car with Christopher, explaining what's up. And what's up is the man who murdered your father is right in there. He just retired today, meaning. And I thought it was like, oh, when you kill a cop, that's really bad. But it's more like he's not useful to us anymore. Like he was a dirty cop, and now he's not useful. So have at him. Here's his address.
Well, and I love this interaction in this scene and the way Tony is trying to like play it up in the right points where he was carrying a crib and it's like, well, he's carrying TV trays, but he could have been carrying a crib for you. And then
I love that because he says yes at first, like he was carrying a crib for me, right? Like, yeah, like, well, no. I was carrying a TV tray, but it could have been a crib,
And then it's like, is that the fucking guy with the sombrero? And he's like, I don't know, you can't tell. But then he's like, yeah, you know what? I think that is him.
Could be.
Yeah, and he's really getting him worked up. I mean, understandable, but it's just interesting that Chris takes it in stride that they did keep this guy around, and it's just now that he's retiring, it's like it's okay. But I don't know, maybe he just understands the business that well. And at the end of the day, it's just about who pulled the trigger, not about who let it happen, I suppose.
Yeah, I think if we're going into that particular part of it, for him, it's like, well, now I get to do this. Like, he
Yeah.
just assumed he was dead. So, assuming he was dead, it's not like, what the fuck? He hasn't been dead all along. It's like, oh, I actually get to do this now. If he had known previously that he was alive, that would have been rough. But not when he's like getting the go ahead. Which again, like from last season, Tony was like maneuvering things just so that they wouldn't like have to kill someone because it's bad, like bad PR. But now it's like he's giving him the blessing to do this and murder someone who's a cop because it's like a little treat for you, Christopher.
Yes, yes. And as we hear him later when he talks to Melfi and kind of explains it almost, where he's trying to turn to his blood and he wants, even though I guess Christopher's not technically blood, but you know what he means because it's what Carmela's cousin or something like that, but that's why he's Uncle Tony somehow. But either way, you know what he means. Christopher's
Yeah.
family amongst the quote family. And I love how it plays out though, because I mean, we're the audience, we're in on it more than Tony because we see Christopher bitching about Tony, and then we see that Christopher's shooting up heroin consistently.
Yeah.
So I understand Tony's rationale, but it's like, oh my God, Tony, you don't know all the fucking everything that's going on here. You maybe want to rethink what you're doing.
Yeah, and even this sort of great gesture, it feels like it's sullied a bit when he's there and actually killing the guy, which again, great. I mean, that's a great scene, the whole thing. But when he says that, like, he has no idea what he's talking about, and whoever's doing this is lying to you, they're manipulating you, and Christopher even acknowledges, like, well, it doesn't matter anyway. If he wants you dead, like, you're gonna be dead. So, because he almost seems like, does he believe it? Does he not? And it's like, shit, I'm in a place where it doesn't even matter if it's true or not because I gotta kill this guy either way. But he must lose some of the like joy of it.
Yeah, so I guess he just kind of resigns himself to, I might as well believe it. But what's your read? Is Tony just picking out some guy? Like, is the part that's true is just that he's just this cop that's no longer useful? Or is it true that this is the guy that killed Christopher's father?
That's a damn good question because obviously it's true that he wants Christopher to be like, see this as a positive thing and all. He doesn't want to set him up like the former cop says. But then again, this might just be a guy who happens to know too much and now he's not useful. So may as well, like, just from the way he's talking in the car when he's like, is that the guy with the sombrero? Well, I can't see from here. Well, you know what? It probably is. Like, it could just be a guy who's like, yeah, okay, so that guy, he had tuberculosis and he passed away, but like, won't you get a kick out of this? Because I was going to have him killed anyway, and now two birds with one stone. So it is a good question. But then again, I also believe that this guy would just not remember something that happened 20 years ago or whatever. So it's a nice mystery.
Or even like if he's a guy, if he is a connected, dirty cop, he'd be savvy enough to just like, obviously he's not going to be like, yeah, it was me, I did it. And I do like that they just kind of leave us here to kind of decide on our own. And I guess I'm like Christopher, I want it to be that he's getting revenge for his dad.
Yeah.
But then again, we don't know for sure, so I might as well just believe it. I might as well just believe he got revenge for his father.
Yep. So Tony goes out to eat with Bobby, and Tony gets the scrambled eggs, which I guess he did mention to Carmela earlier. What, are you worried about my eating or whatever? But like, I guess we've all been there when we're like, I should have the healthy thing, but then immediately he orders the steak.
Yeah, he got it's like eggs with no oil and sliced tomatoes. And then Bobby has this huge plate of fried shit. And I guess it's a steak, but it's like you can't even almost not see the steak. There's just like onion rings and all kinds of stuff topped on it. And it's like, hon, let me get another one of those. Get another steak over here. And Bobby has the great line about Quasimodo and
I thought for sure this was going to be the clip at the start of the episode, Jim.
I've used it on Jim and Them, so
That's where I've heard it. That makes sense. So if you don't know, dear listener, on Jim and Them, they start with some clips from some great TV show or similar, and yeah, that's. I was like, this sounds familiar, but I don't know from where. So I actually have heard it on Jim and Them.
There's probably some other Sopranos quotes coming up that you've heard if you've heard them on Jim and Them. But yeah, I like it because I feel like this is a dumb thought I've had too, where it's like, oh yeah, Quasimodo, Nostradamus, like they don't really sound like each other, but they kind of sound like each other. And Bobby just sounds really dumb with what he's saying because it is a dumb thing to say, and it's like you never thought about that. The Notre Dame thing. And he's like, no, I never, I never thought about that. But just what a great way to break down this whole feeling that we're facing Armageddon, just like Nostradamus said, or Quasimodo, the Hunchback of Notre Dame.
But then he also goes into, and then you also got your quarterback and halfback of Notre Dame, and that's just because it's the name of a place or several places, right? I don't know about any quarterback stuff, but like I know enough that that's not a coincidence. That's just a name.
Yeah, now he's just talking like Notre Dame college football team. Like now it's just like, oh yeah, you got your quarterback. And it's like, no, that's not. That's not it at all.
And the Hunchback, yeah.
But I also I can just weirdly relate to like, oh yeah, I've thought dumb things like that, but I would never speak them out loud to another person because this is what would happen. And yeah, so in the midst of this, we got Tony's talking to Bobby about that, also talking about the promotion. And Bobby is, even though he's another criminal like the rest of them, he's such a sweet character that. To me, I'm like excited for him. I'm like, oh, that's good. It is long overdue. You need to promote this man, even though he's not very smart or hasn't done anything that great.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I do love how he's like, because he is such a bumbling idiot that I feel like he would never make it to captain, but he's there like, yeah, I feel like this should have happened a long time ago. It's like, well, do you though? Because everyone just died. Everyone else in the crew got killed. You were the only one who was stupid enough to like not upset anyone, and you wore the Santa outfit, so now you're a capo.
And then while that's going on, I mean, I believe Junior does get, well, he gets a call. He's hanging out with that other old man who I don't know who that other old man is. He's just another old Goomba, I guess, Junior's friend. He tries to sneak away while he's sleeping. He makes him answer the phone, and I believe that's where they kind of get the news that there's a Fed or that the doctor's office is not a viable option anymore. Chris does kill the cop, which I guess before I forget, we need to throw it up on the old death counter there. Get the old.
Hang on, let me. I gotta pull that up. But yes, you're right. There's a murder, and I love that scene. He like turns up. What is it, Magnum PI in the background?
Yep.
And like to sort of mask the sounds of it, but it also works really great. The audio with the way it's shot, and it's almost like you hear the sirens, so it seems like someone's coming, and he is killing a cop and all. And the way it sort of follows on him, because we know he did those drugs earlier as well. So he's really in it. It's a really well shot scene, and he like freaks out and shoots the swordfish as well. So good stuff all around.
And what a bad cover, because then he does the thing where he puts the gun in the guy's hand and makes it seem like he committed suicide, but meanwhile he's handcuffed to a piece of his stairs that he ripped off to try to escape. I mean, maybe
he's clearly shot in the ass as well, I think. And which you wouldn't do if you were killing yourself.
And I guess maybe he would have shot his own fish if he, they could maybe build a storyline around that. But either way, do you get your counter up?
I do.
All right, let's add another one to the listing.
That's right. So we're now at 32 deaths, still at 11 walkouts. Oh, this show is just getting more and more mentally balanced by the moment. More murder, less walking out of therapy.
And we do get a quick shot of Carmela seeing, just someone else being dead on the news, and they do mention potentially tied to organized crime. So just a nice quick visual of like what that life is, just waiting to see your husband or even someone else, some other close friend or family member on the news being like loaded into the back of an ambulance because they're dead. And then we kind of cut back to Tony and Bobby are at Junior's, and they're talking about the feds. And I do like that Tony says something to Junior about how could you fall for that fucking flirty shit. But there were those moments in those scenes where she was giving the eyes to Tony and Tony was giving the eyes back. So he is just as gullible as Junior.
Yeah, and I mean, hilariously, we also see him eyeing Danielle when she's at the house and they're
Oh,
shaking hands.
yeah.
So he's doing exactly the same thing. But yeah, it's been revealed that's probably an FBI person. And meanwhile, the audience, I feel, isn't as affected because we're like, well, the Danielle's got a lot more than that. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And I do like that it's not even fully confirmed. I mean, it probably is that nurse because she does say she's leaving now or something. But it kind of
yeah,
could have been that doctor. It could be anyone else as well. But I like that they just kind of leave it there. And then this is where Tony has his fake compassion by, oh, I'll take this lot off your hands. I do assume that he's going to help him a little bit more as well, but we do know that this isn't fully an unselfish act because, as he talked to the selectmen, we need to get some more of this land, build these hotels, or wait for the property values to go up.
yeah, exactly. So next scene here is, I think, therapy, and Tony comes in saying, "I'm a little depressed," and he says, "You were on vacation," and I was like, "I remember. Like they always take vacation on the same months or something, right? That's the thing."
And I believe it was August because I thought the
Mm,
same thing, and I think I looked it up, and it's supposed to be August is the therapy. So because it lines up with what they're talking about, although I guess maybe AJ started school a little early, but Meadow's still in the process of potentially signing up for classes, so it could line up for basically around when the episode premieres, end of August, early September.
yes, 2002, I guess.
Yeah.
So yes. So this whole scene, we get into what we've already discussed, that the thing about Carmela bringing up the children and everything has made him think, or he has been thinking anyway. He actually says she's right. Not that I'd ever tell her that, but like there's only two possible outcomes: either dead or in the can. And then he's like, but wait, there's a third one. If you're like an old guy just giving all your orders through your son, then you're in the clear apparently because you're not connected to anything. And I don't have a son. Well, I do, but he's doing his thing. So we got fucking Christopher over here, and it's gonna be great. And yeah, this sort of feels like it's teeing up what this season is going to be about, because Christopher has been, obviously on the come up since season 1, and now all of a sudden it's like, yeah, he's going to be right below me, and it's like, oh, there's like a bunch of people between you and him on the chain of command right now, but you're sort of working him up.
Yep.
And that's going to cause all sorts of problems, not least because Christopher is not completely suited for it, at least not right now. I want to believe, hey, it's all going to work out great, but I feel like it's not. And Tony doesn't know all the facts. He just sort of has this romanticized idea of like, oh yeah, because Christopher is blood, so it's great. It's going to be great because I saw a guy who was like that and it worked for them, so it's going to work for me. But like he doesn't see what's in front of him. He just sees the sort of ideal.
Yes, and also it's yet another kind of twist on going back to season 1 when he was complaining about the new generation and how they don't have the same loyalty. He was complaining about Christopher, but
Yep.
now he's at this point where he thinks Christopher is going to be his golden boy, his right-hand man, and again, it's like like he's making it seem like, oh, loyalty, family, we trust each other. But this is just another way of him using family to shield himself, like he did to Junior. He used Junior one way, and now he wants to use Christopher another way, because again, this is about like those two endings will come upon Christopher and not him. So it's not even that great, like ethnic familia, like we rely on family, we help each other out. It's just another selfish thing. And then it's also kind of, this scene in general to me is kind of a cheat by the writers to explain what's going on, because they address it by having Melfi say, why are you telling me this? Because he's being so candid here about his life of crime in therapy. But then again, we are at season 4. It has been 3 years of him going to Melfi, and we do know that Melfi relies on him a little bit, just as much as he relies on her. So it is almost at this point where they're past the pleasantries, and it would take something really big for Melfi to run to the police. Just him talking in general here about crime isn't as egregious as, say, it would have been in season 1.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. So he actually says here, I started the process of bonding him to me inseparably. And at that point, I was like, huh, what? Because from Christopher's point of view, obviously earlier there, he's complaining all about Tony and how he won't like let him in, won't tell him anything, and so on. It does line up though, of course, in Tony's mind. It's just so out of sync. I'd like it to be that he's just started the process. Like I hope he has more steps in mind that will actually expedite this process, and maybe one of them's fucking putting Christopher in rehab. I don't know.
Yeah, and I guess, to him handing up the revenge for his dad on a platter like that it is quite a big step forward, I'd imagine. So to him, that's like his kind of part of his holy grail, to get Christopher to look upon him as, his go-to guy and someone he'd take a bullet for. But I guess we'll see. I do love this end scene when Christopher's at his house with his mother, which I believe is a different actress than we saw previously when he was in the hospital in season 2. But I like seeing the pictures of Dickie Maltasanti, his dad, and he's kind of just sitting there like smoking a cigarette. He's asking his mom for breakfast, like what, a fluffernutter or something or other.
I don't know what that is, but yeah.
It's like a marshmallow. Usually have it with like peanut butter and fluffernutter. It's like this weird marshmallow spread, and I assume she made some sort of breakfast treat with it. But it's kind of sweet because even though she doesn't have fluffernutter, she's going to make him French toast. And I like that because he's sitting at the table with the army picture of his dad. And then when he gets up to leave and she sits down and she's sitting there, and when it cuts back to her, she's put the photo down. Yeah. Like, again, like she can't even, like, she doesn't even want to look at the picture. I mean, and I guess it's not all out of like, oh, the love of my Dickie was a saint, because she does even mention like, well, what was better, when he was in jail half the time or in the army half the time?
Or when he's dead.
Or now when he's dead. That's what it was. Yeah. And then he puts the 20 on the fridge and it zooms in and the song kicks in again. Like, it's all masterful. Like, it's such a great ender, such a great scene. I'm for it. I'm standing it right now.
Yeah, it's such a great episode as well, and a great one if like 13 million people are watching it to like really show that we know what we're doing. And I think you're totally right about the confidence, because there have been things they do quite often, like where we're like, huh, that didn't seem quite in line with what should happen on The Sopranos, even though, like, how would we know that better than the people actually making it? But like things just felt off. And here, even when they do slightly more extreme things, like zoom in on the money there at the end, it still feels completely right and cohesive in a way. Like, that was the thing. Some of the style stuff that they're doing will sometimes feel like it's out of left field. It doesn't connect with everything else. And here they have a lot of style and have a lot of like specific things they're doing, but it all works together in a great way.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, here's the season 4. We're in it. But to go back to, I guess, young Jim, even though I did, when I first watched this episode, I do kind of have memories of my feelings throughout season 4. And I did, like, I mean, I loved the song and I love the ending still, but I feel like I was still that guy that's like, where's the mob violence? Like, come on. All we get is one death. Like, come on, what are we doing?
I felt that was like a little bit of violence candy for the viewers to keep you all going, because it's like a great scene with a cold-blooded murder. They could have easily had like a 30 minutes about the FBI trying to plant something again, and this was, I don't know, I felt like it was a good mix of things. They got some violence in there, though granted, not to the levels we might see in something like, Goodfellas, because obviously this is not Goodfellas.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's that. Send us your thoughts at showswhatyouknowshow@gmail.com, or please submit a review to Cut to Black, a Sopranos Sit Down on iTunes. or I suppose we're on Stitcher too. We should probably check that out.
I'm pretty sure we're on. Oh yeah, the reviews. You mean? I
yeah.
can only assume there are hundreds on Stitcher, on whatever podcatching platform you like. But if you want it read out on the show, just put it on iTunes. Maybe a high number of stars. We'd appreciate that. And yeah, let us know what you think moving into season 4. You can also send that to showswhatyouknowshow@gmail.com. More importantly, there's of course showswhatyouknow.com with all our things. Shall I just keep saying URLs? jimandthem.com, awesomepedia.org. That's all you really need.
Except for one thing.
What's that?
Cut to black.